All right. Hello, everyone. Sorry for the awkward transition. I just want to make sure everyone was here with us before we got started. Hello, I'm Sarah. I am on the board for Pitch Wars, and today I have a chat with some of our middle grade Pitch Wars mentors who will be answering all of your questions, except for Wishlist, which we'll get into in a minute. If you aren't familiar with Pitch Wars, please go to www.pitchwars.org to learn more about it. We have Lee Marr, our assistant social media director, currently our social media director, is on Twitter. And so if you are watching on Twitter or commenting on Twitter, she'll be bringing your comments over for us. So thank you, Lee, for doing that today. And since wish lists aren't live yet, our mentors today will not be able to talk about or answer questions about their wish lists. They are not being mean. We do not allow them to do that. That's our fault. So don't blame them. Blame me. It's fine. I'm used to it. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and bring on our mentors and have them introduce themselves. Let's start with Adrianna.
So hi, everyone. I'm Adrianna Cuevas. I am the author of The Total Eclipse of Nestor Lopez and the upcoming Cuba in My Pocket, which releases in just over 2 weeks. And it's a historical fiction, and I'm very excited about it. And that's me.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shannon A. Thompson. I'm the author of the Timely Death trilogy and the Bad Blood series. During the day, I work as a librarian, and I'm repped by Caitlin Uplinger at D4EO Literary.
Hi, everyone. Go ahead, Rebecca. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rebecca Petruck, and I am the author of the middle grade novels Steering Toward Normal and Boy Bites Bug, which are both contemporary, kind of humorous. And I've just completed a graphic novel script called Fart that is a humorous lower middle grade as well. And I'm very excited to talk with you today.
And then, hi everyone, I'm Sandra Proudman. I don't have a book out yet. Hopefully by this time next year, I'll be able to share one. I know, hopefully. I have a couple projects out on submission. I usually write Latinx, middle grade, YA, adult, a little bit of everything, but I'm really excited to answer your questions today. This is my 3rd year as a Pitch Wars mentor, so I'm hoping another amazing year mentoring an MG writer this year.
All right. We have a couple people commenting already. We just have one question. It's funny you mentioned graphic novels, Rebecca, because that's what our first question. Do you have any tips, advice for people submitting graphic novels in Pitch Wars?
Well, one of the things about graphic novels is there's not a standardized format across the industry. So it's really trying to find what works for you as far as being clear about the imagery you expect on the page, and of course the dialogue that happens. And for me, it was really about paring down as much as possible. With narrative, you can have a little bit of looseness as far as describing place and the inner world of your characters and that sort of thing. But with graphic novels, I was writing that in all the notes, and I'm like, this doesn't actually help the artist in any way. So it's really about keeping it really tight. You do want to be sure that there is enough that an acquiring editor reading it understands the character arc, the journey. And I found that really it does take as much time to draft, even a 200-page graphic novel as a narrative novel, because I spent so much time thinking about the shape of the page, the shape of the different image blocks and that sort of thing. So, and I think that's really important, because that can have as much impact as what the characters are actually doing. So it's really thinking about in a different way, trying to be as visual as you can in your thinking, and just keeping it super tight. I hope that helps.
All right. Anybody else want to add anything? I don't know if any of the rest of you work in graphic novels. Nope. Okay, cool. Oh, all right. Ashley asks one of my favorite questions. What is your favorite tip for writing a great query letter? Go
Who
for
wants
it.
to I can jump in real fast. So one of my favorite tips for writing a good query letter, which I love query letters, they're one of my strongest suits, is to not be vague. I think a lot of writers try to bury their huck in their query letter, but you have to remember that agents haven't read your story yet. So don't worry about being vague. Just put it all out there. Be brave. Just mention every single detail that you think is going to be juicy enough to pull in a reader, because an agent is going to be drawn to those facts. So don't be vague, and then just have fun with your query letter as well, and make sure that you're showcasing any type of different voice that you show in your actual writing. It gets applied to your query letter as well.
I totally agree with that. I think too, whenever I'm looking at query letters as a mentor and helping my mentees with that, I always want to know, it has to be obvious in the query letter. Like, why should I care about this story? What are the stakes? Why should I care about this character? If you're not making it clear what's at risk in this story, then that query is not going to stand out to me. I'm not going to really have much buy-in to the story that you're trying to tell. So really make it clear, like, what's at stake for your character, or what's at stake in the plot in your query letter.
I'd like to add that I also really want to see the emotions of your main character. It can be really easy to say, this character's on this journey, but if I don't know how they feel about it, or I don't get a sense of how they're going to grow throughout the manuscript, that's a reason that I would put it down. So make sure that you're adding that emotional arc to your query as well.
And one last note is, a query can be incredibly useful for you personally as you work on a manuscript too. I tried to write a query before my first draft, and it might be really bad, but at least it gives me a sense of what is the focus, what is the point of this manuscript. And then between each draft, I'll rewrite that query or flat copy. They're very similar. And that helps me, really, again, keep it tight and stay focused on what the point is.
That's a really good point, Rebecca. You just made me, I just had a little bit of like a light bulb moment. So the book that I'm at on sub now with my agent, when we were doing revisions, one of the things she said was, I'm thinking about the PW announcement, and she has the setup, right? And she's like, but what? Like, what happens if she doesn't do what she's doing, right? And so that we basically did a whole round of revisions based on the pitch, right? Because we needed like stakes. So we did a round of revisions to up the stakes. So yeah. All right. Learned something new today. Savannah asks, what do each of you plan your revision period looking like?
Like, as mentors of how we would work
Yeah.
with our...
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a co-mentor with Sarah Caput, and this is our third year co-mentoring together, but this is my fourth year being a Pitch Wars mentor. So typically Sarah and I, we will send our edit letter to our mentee. We will tell them to breathe, read it slowly, take a walk, and really, we always like to be there for the brainstorming. Like, that's how when I'm revising, I just let my mind kind of run and pop up any idea that I think might solve the issues that have been brought up in my manuscript. So Sarah and I really always like to be there for brainstorming with our mentee of how they think they might go about fixing the manuscript. And then we just leave you to like get started on it. But we're always in contact where you can hop back in and say, hey, I'm working on this. Does this sound right if I go down this path? Or so we're really kind of there as touch points. If you need reassurance that yes, what I'm about to tackle is okay. One thing that Sarah and I both advocate for, and it's because she and I both have had to undergo very extensive revisions with manuscripts before. So that's something that we are not particularly afraid of. So a lot of times mentees may look at what we're suggesting and think, oh my God, you're having me rewrite this whole, end section. But we always try to encourage you that if it's going to make your manuscript better, you really, really want to, roll up your sleeves and put the work in, even though it might be a big deal. So for us, it's a lot of support, a lot of communication to help you along the way as you're revising. Because I think a lot of times you really do need that reassurance that, yes, I am on the right path. I'm not making this worse. I'm making it better.
Anybody else? Oh,
Yeah,
go
so
ahead.
Shannon and I are actually co-mentors, so it's amazing being on here at the same time. And then Shannon, anytime you want to step in, you can step in. But usually our revision, this is going to be our second year as co-mentors. And I want to say first and foremost, everybody's revision process is different. So one of the ways that we approach is that everybody is going to have their unique way of working. And so we usually are really open to pivoting to whatever our mentee needs at the time. So if we start off with a revision process, usually we start off with a calendar that we're going to try to do at least 2 rounds of revisions, or at least read the manuscript 2 times for our mentee. And we pivot according to what our mentee needs at the time. And sometimes they're able to get their manuscript to us as a whole manuscript. Sometimes we're reading it in chunks. Just dependent on what our mentee's timeline looks like. And so we're really open to just kind of the revision process that you would need, right? And so working that out with you after the fact is kind of what I think we would mostly do. And Shannon, you can correct me if I'm wrong and add into that.
No, Sandra said pretty much everything that we did last year. Is we're really supportive of our mentee, and we know that every writer has their own revising strategy, and we try to mold into that. So like Sandra said, we're willing to look at the manuscript twice, whether it's given to us as a whole or in chunks. We're really, really flexible, and we're willing to work on, numerous plans until you feel like you're getting the strongest manuscript you possibly can.
And for me, the first thing I discuss is that the agent showcase is the least important part of what we're doing with this program. It's an exciting part. It is really fun. But if we really do try to shoot for that deadline, but it's also, I don't want it to damage the process of revising, to rush the process of revising. So, with one of my mentees, Rhonda Romani, she basically, wrote a brand new book, literally, we changed the focus completely to, a Syrian graffiti artist whose parents sent him to America when the Syrian revolution began to turn from, a hopeful path to something, of course, that became much darker. And so writing a brand new book, in 2.5 months was just not going to happen. She did. She got 2 really good drafts. But we just really felt like she needed one more, solid pass before she began to query. And it was the right decision. But we do, we really do try to push for the agent showcase, but it's, the focus is on the manuscript. And then for me personally, we do talk and brainstorm a lot at the beginning. And then, we have a plan, and I do like to read the first act just to be sure that the plan is going along as, we both kind of envisioned. And then after that, I'll just read as my mentee wants me to read. Some have wanted to finish the whole manuscript, and others have wanted me to read in chunks, and that's fine. So.
All right. Carl asked, are there any irksome trends in middle grade storytelling?
Yes. Okay.
Rebecca's thoughts.
One, I love upper middle grade, and there is a growing, number of books in upper middle grade, and I'm really happy to see that. I think it's still a little difficult for editors and booksellers to figure out kind of where to place those books, but that's a whole category of young teens who need books for them. So that's always been, and my debut was in upper middle grade. And then the other thing is the prohibition on kissing in middle grade, right? So first kisses happen in 7th and 8th grade, or for a lot of people I know, and crushes and all that sort of thing. And there seems, there for a long time, and maybe this is changing, there was this directive, no romance in middle grade. And I was like, but that's when kids are starting to, feel those feelings and have crushes and want to be with other people in a sweet way. And that doesn't mean romance. So I love to see first kisses or crushes blooming between people. My mentee from last year, Alexis, it was the girls are at the end of 8th grade, and there is a very sweet subplot between a girl and her crush. And I love that we were able to keep that in. So those are my two pet peeves.
Rebecca, you have me thinking now. I'm like, wait, when did I have was I like behind the curve with the first kiss? Or anyways, for me, and I think Sarah, my co-mentor, and I have noticed this, and I've actually noticed this with my son. So he's 13. He is strictly a manga reader now because he can read through those books very quickly. There is still a market for shorter middle grade. I keep noticing the word counts get longer and longer, like verging into YA fantasy territory. You have to remember where some of these students are coming from. Some of my favorite middle grade books are by Tori Maldonado, who writes very, very short middle grade, and they are amazing and impactful and fantastic. And they're not over 200 pages. And I wouldn't classify them. They're not lower middle grade because of that short word count. They're still dealing with fantastic topics that kids need to kind of grapple with, and they're wanting to grapple with. So for me, the bloated word counts, because honestly, sometimes I feel like you could tell the same story in a more succinct way. My son is the type of kid who, when he starts a new chapter of a book, he thumbs through and sees how long the chapter is before he starts reading it, because he wants to know what's my commitment on this? What am I in for? And there are a lot of kids like that. It's not that he's a reluctant reader. He loves to read, but he has an unfortunate attention span like I do. And so you need to know, that some of these kids are wanting shorter reads. So you don't have to. A lot of times when Sarah and I see some of the word counts that we get with submissions, that's going to be a huge commitment on a poor 12, 13-year-old reader's part. And some of them really aren't in for that buy-in. And I've noticed that teachers and librarians are looking for shorter middle grades too. So don't be afraid of those more succinctly told stories, because I personally love those, because I have a terrible attention span.
Shannon, so show us the kitty. Oh my gosh.
I can
All right,
jump
anyone?
into yeah, real
go
fast, just to kind of go off of what Adrianna was saying, that agents also don't necessarily want to see these bloated manuscripts when they get them, because you have to remember, if you have a manuscript that's a middle grade, or even a YA that's, a YA that's 100,000 K, or a middle grade that's, borderline 60K, you have to remember that those are more opportunities to tell a bad story when you're sending it to an agent. So if you have something that's really succinct, you can feel better about the chances are that you've told, that you have a good arc, that it's not just lingering in the middle, that you don't have a soggy middle in there. And so that's one of the things that we usually look at, is how do we make this story more succinct? Because agents don't necessarily want to don't have the bandwidth nowadays to do a lot of this work that goes into making these stories succinct. Even if you end up sending it on submission with a bigger word count, chances are that your agent first is going to make you cut. My agent made with my middle grade that went on sub recently, like my agent had me cut 8,000 words before we even sent it out. But an editor might be the person who decides to inflate that number, right? And so you have to leave the opportunity for an agent and then for an editor to choose whether or not you need more words in there. And so that I agree with Adrianna that we need more lower word counts just in general, not only for readers, but also to better your opportunities of landing an agent.
And just to add like kind of a real world example So my first book sold, I think it was like 52,000. But when I worked with my editor, we added it so that it published, I think, at like 74,000, which was a big deal. But he 100% was behind the idea that, I mean, he was the one who asked for it, but behind the idea that it needed this extra plot element. But then for Boy Bites Bug, it was in my contract that it be 50,000 words or less. That's partly about printing. It's about how many books they can ship in a box. There are a lot of behind the scenes practical reasons too for manuscripts to be, for books to be a certain page count. So.
Excuse me, Adrianna, I like that you mentioned that just because a book has a shorter word count doesn't mean it's automatically for younger readers. Because I've heard Nick Stone talk about Dear Martin, and she specifically wrote that short, even though obviously the subject matter of Dear Martin is not, for younger, well, I guess it could be, but it's not written for younger people. It's written to be short, to be more accessible to more casual readers, because it's only 50,000 words, just over 50,000 words in young adult. So yeah. All right. BMR asks, do you think a 14-year-old boy protagonist is unsellable for upper middle grade? Everyone says no. That's an easy answer. Okay.
Well, it just to add, it does depend on the subject matter, right? You can have a 14-year-old character in a YA novel and it be appropriate because of the subject matter, and 14 in an upper middle grade. So it does, the content makes a difference.
There's one book I read, and because of my inability to maintain information in my brain, I can't remember the author. So maybe some of you know, but it's called The Greatest Zombie Movie Ever Made. And it has a boy main character that I want to say, like, he's 8th or 9th grade. It's that, in my opinion, those are two grades that we like never see. And I feel like we absolutely need more books with all kinds of characters that are in that 8th grade, 9th grade. Because it seems like middle grade jumps from like 6th grade, and then all of a sudden they're planning college, and what am I going to do when I graduate? Like, what the hell happened between there? Those are like huge critical years. And so no, I'm dying for more books that deal with that, because in all honesty, because I was a teacher for 16 years before I started writing full time, and I feel like 8th grade, 9th grade, like that's when you lose readers. That's when kids decide whether they're readers or not. And I wish we had more exciting stories to engage that age group, because I really do feel like that's when kids, they get to high school and they're reading the classics and they're like, well, this sucks, I'm not a reader. And so I really wish that we had more books that would engage that age. So I'm freaking out. Yes, please write that story.
It's funny because for the greatest zombie movie ever, it seems like Jeff's entire brand is, we've never seen this in a book before, so that works for him.
Wait, so who's the author?
Jeff Strand.
Okay, I wasn't. I just remembered the book because I loved it, but I couldn't remember who the author was.
He used to live near me, so that's why. He moved, but he still comes down here often. All right. George asked, should a person submit to Pitch Wars after they complete a story, or wait and query and see how it goes? If no luck, enter the contest, see if mentors can help. I will say, like, I've been doing a lot of podcasts, and this is something that I've been asked a lot. So I'll just give my quick answer that I've been saying all the time. Is like, you should submit to Pitch Wars if you think that there is something with your story that you would like help with, and you don't feel like you can do it on your own. And so I don't place that in the querying journey at all, just like in general, like if it's before, if it's after, whatever. But feel free to add on whatever y'all want to say.
Yeah, I can add on real fast. I would say, it never hurts to submit to Pitch Wars, right? It can only help your chances of landing an agent or getting really, really amazing mentorship and revision tips, especially if this is your first project. Or if honestly, if it's your first project, whether it's your first project, you can probably use the help. Or if it's your fourth, fifth, sixth project and you're still not able to land an agent, you probably do need a little bit more help in figuring out, what's going on, what am I doing wrong, and how can I better myself as a storyteller, and how can I learn more about the publishing industry. So it really just depends on how you're feeling about I think if you're considering entering Pitch Wars, you should do it. Honestly, I think there's nothing that would hold you back. And it also just gives you a better opportunity to engage with the community at the end of the day, and learn a little bit about different things about Pitch Wars and the community, and learn from mentors. So I would say, go for it.
I would like to add, just go ahead and submit to Pitch Wars, because when you query, you want to query with your strongest manuscript possible. You really only get that one shot. And so if you're considering a mentorship opportunity, that tells me that that there's places in your manuscript where you could grow. So absolutely submit to mentorships, because it's only going to help you get just a little bit further with your work.
Yeah, I always say the only person who shouldn't submit to Pitch Wars is someone who does not want to make any changes to their story and thinks their writing is perfect, because then you'll have 3 months of nothing to do. All right. Any tips regarding how to hit that unique middle grade voice? Sincerely, a YA writer who's concerned about sounding too grown up or cheesy.
I always like to say read as much as you can in the genre and the age group that you're trying to hit. And that's really how you learn and how do you connect with hearing that voice, especially if you can try to both read on paper and listen to audiobooks. I think it's a great way to kind of learn what that MG voice is nowadays. And you might figure out that you have a perfect voice. You might figure out that your syntax needs to change a little bit just to keep it from being that YA voice, more of a middle grade voice. You can also do things like watch movies or listen to podcasts that might have MG characters in them, and kind of learn what people are writing nowadays in terms of that middle grade voice.
This is where critique partners might help as well. Send it to some of your writing friends and see what voice that they think it is, and it might help you identify what's making you feel that way.
There's frequently been times, like as I've read over manuscripts that have been submitted to me, if my son is sitting, near where I am, I will ask him, hey, do you know what this word means? Because somebody's used it in a manuscript or a phrase. And I'll ask him, do kids your age say this? And so a lot of the times he's like, Mom, no one says that. Why are you even bothering me? Or it's clearly a word. He's like, no, I either don't know what that means, or nobody my age would use that term, because you can tell it's where the author's own voice and vocabulary is coming in. So yeah, definitely be mindful of that. I'd say if you are a YA author and you're switching to middle grade, not only voice, but also be mindful of pacing. Because I think that's something else that really comes up in when you switch from middle grade to YA. I was reading a YA off of NetGalley a few weeks ago, and I'm not going to say what it was because I had to quit reading it because I realized I was 5 chapters in, and the main character was still in her head thinking about this situation she was in and what she was going to do. And something has to happen for me here. That's just, in middle grade, it has to be a little more briskly paced. So other than just voice, also please be mindful of pacing as well.
That's literally the note I wrote to myself so I wouldn't forget the word, internalization. That's often the difference that I'll see in middle grade and YA. And it's not that middle graders don't have, an inner life, of course, but how that's expressed, their awareness of it is quite different from YA. So again, 100% what Sandra said, read lots of middle grade, and keeping that in mind, while you're making the transition, about, as Adrianna said, about kind of making sure that there's external stuff happening as well as some of the internal, and definitely keep the internal to a minimum.
All right. Adrianna, you reminded me of a TikTok I saw today. I told you that I'm like not focused today, but basically this woman, she was like, my mom just like replaces words sometimes in stories when she doesn't know like exactly what the word was. And so she was asking her daughter why her son said adios, Philip, on his way out the door. And it turned out he said, bye, Felicia. She was like, she remembered it as adios, Philip. I thought it was hilarious. All right. Anyway. Brenda is here and said, thank you, middle grade mentors, for being so generous with your time. Without talented volunteers like you, there would be no Pitch Wars. Thanks for stopping by, Brenda. If you don't know, Brenda is the founder of Pitch Wars and the she's on the board of directors, of course. All right, so let me go back to find where my questions were. Okay. Sarah Evans asked, thanks so much for your time today. Do you have a definite word count cap on upper middle grade?
I think it's more about being willing to cut down. If we are going to choose you as a mentee and saying, hey, are you willing to make this smaller? Are you willing to cut scenes to make it more efficient? That's what I would be more concerned with than a general word count.
I tend to be a severe underwriter when I am doing a first draft. So typically, if I can end up, and this is just for me when I'm writing, in the mid to low 40s when I'm drafting, I know that when I look at my plot arcs, my character arcs, I'm going to need to add stuff. But now I've given myself room to do that. If I do my first draft and it's freaking 80,000 words and I still need to add things, like, oops. So, no, I don't know that I really want to say like definite word count cap, because it's what Shannon said. It's how well is the story being told? Because there are better writers than I am that can really make 80,000 words seem like it flew by and it was fantastic. If I tried to do that, you would be like, woman, this is not working for me. Hurry up. So yeah, it's make sure that you're giving yourself some cushion, I guess, on either side, either to be willing to cut things, but then also to add things because you're needing to improve plot or characterization or something.
And I'll add too that number is something that it's one of the first things an agent and editor will see in your submission. And so, an editor can ask for more words, but if something lands in their inbox that says middle grade 80,000, unless it's fantasy, then like their first reaction is going to be, and in a space where time is everything and they're looking for any reason to knock something out of their inbox, that can be, a problem. So, for upper middle grade, when I'm working with someone, I try to keep it, 55, 60, maybe 65, and the pitch would have to be super strong, like really hooky in order to, merit that number, I guess. But, it's not only that, there's these, strict guidelines or that we're being mean, we're also thinking about how it presents when you actually are querying and when you do go on sub. So that's another factor to keep in mind.
Yeah, just to add in, I think if you're pursuing, publishing in general, you always have to keep in mind, how am I going to sell this project, right? Because that's your goal at the end of the day. If you're pursuing Pitch Wars in terms of wanting to become a published author through, what do you call it? Through navigating through a publisher, you would have to keep those things in mind, right? So I think the biggest thing is not only to keep your word count in mind, but to be open to making the word count to where it kind of has to end up in terms of having a good story told in with your character arc in it, with your stakes in there. And at the end of the day, as long as you're able to tell that proper story, that good story, I think that a good range for middle grade in general is anywhere from 30,000 words to 65,000 words when you're going to query. And again, I mentioned it before, but afterward, maybe your agent or an editor will add words to that. But just in terms of getting an agent and getting your foot in the door, I think keeping it below 65,000 words is a good way to go.
I have seen in the past, I don't know if any of you have done it. That is something sometimes a mentor will do is work with a manuscript to reduce word count and to cut the fluff out. All right. Bridget asks, a synopsis is super difficult to write. Any advice on how to draft one and what makes a synopsis stand out?
Write your synopsis first. I know it's probably too late, but when I started doing that, and I work on it between drafts again, just like with the query, when I've written the synopsis first, even knowing it's probably going to change dramatically, between drafts, it just helps me stay focused on the main points. But I know that's probably not practical for us right now. And so the main thing I like to think of are, kind of the 7 big beats. If you look at like the Save the Cat beat sheet, the inciting incident, the debate, the launch into 2, the midpoint, bad guys close in, I think about those and I just write one sentence, for each of those beats. And then I think about what is the character change? What is the issue at the beginning and how do they change by the end? Probably how that is evoked in the manuscript as well. And thinking a little bit about the character's want and then ultimately the character need, which is, very related to the change. And so when I kind of list all of those things side by side, I have the bare bones of my synopsis, and then I can flesh it out so it reads well. But that's a good way to, especially for debuts, it's 1 page, right? Fortunately, once you start with a 2nd or 3rd book and you're pitching on proposal, you can write much longer synopses. But when you're thinking about 1 page, that's a good way just to get started.
A little self-promo, sorry. I just posted a link in the comments. I have a video on how to write a synopsis without stressing. So if you want to check that out after we're done here, not now.
Yeah, so definitely check out Sarah's video. I'm sure that talks pretty much it'll help tremendously. But I would say the same thing as a query letter. Don't be vague, especially in a synopsis. You should give away your ending. That way an agent knows exactly how the story ends. And like Rebecca said, your story arc, which is incredibly important. And then don't name too many characters is probably one of my biggest tips, because I see it a lot, is don't, you should really only be naming your characters in terms of saying their actual name. Your protagonist, your love interest, and your antagonist is usually what's recommended. If you don't have a love interest, you can, of course, fit somebody else in there. But you don't want to be naming too many names because then it starts getting confusing. So what you would do instead of that is mention, the aunt. Instead of naming, the aunt is Shannon. Instead of being like Shannon, blah, 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 you would mention the aunt. And then you would kind of use it in terms of that. So you don't want to have too many names in there. And that kind of coincides with not having too many threads. And so I think what a lot of writers tend to do is they want to talk about every single thread that's in their story. And again, like Rebecca mentioned, if you go through and put down your actual story arc, it becomes really clear to you what's fluff and what is actual content of the story. And the way I always like to write them is thinking about it in terms of a show season. And you can kind of think about it like if you actually look at a show, and if you go on Netflix and you see the recap of each show, it kind of gives you an idea of how show seasons are actually put together. And so I've done synopsises in terms of that before, where you actually think about it in terms of a show arc. I think that helps kind of narrow down what's fluff and what isn't.
I think also, and this kind of goes with Rebecca's recommendation of writing your synopsis first, the strongest ones that I've seen, it's obvious that there's cause and effect in the story. If I'm reading through your synopsis and it just sounds like a series of events. This happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. That's going to be a teeny bit, not a red flag, like, oh my gosh, I don't want this story, but that's going to show me that perhaps your story arc isn't as strong as it could be. Your characters aren't in charge of what's happening and actively making decisions that change the course of the story. So when I read a synopsis, I like to see cause and effect. So when Rebecca was talking about those beats, I would want to see, because they did this in beat 1, this happens in beat 2. And then they had a choice in beat 2, and it could have been this or this, but because they chose that. And so I really want to see a clear connection as I'm reading through your synopsis, that the characters are making choices, and it could be that something is happening to them, and because of that, they are going one way or another. It shouldn't just be a flat, straight timeline. And so I think a really good synopsis makes it clear that there's cause and effect in the story.
All right. Okay, cool. So I'm going to hop around a little bit. Courtney has a question, but I kind of wanted to expand it to a larger question since you have all been mentors before. Can you kind of walk us through from when you get access to your inbox, how you go through the subs and how you make your decision? Just walk us through the whole process. No one wants to go first.
I can jump in. Well, Sandra and I are co-mentors. So what we have done in the past is split submissions. I'll take the first half. She'll take the second half. We will have a goal of, let's pick 5 apiece that we share with each other. And then we'll hop on Zoom and talk about those 5 manuscripts that we really loved. We'll go check out the other person's choices. And from there, we'll dwindle it down to how many manuscripts we really want to read. We will ask those writers for those manuscripts. And then once we read, Sandra and I, again, will hop back on Zoom and talk about the pros and cons and why we think not only the book will work, but if we are the right mentors for that book. That's also really important, because we can come across a manuscript that we're like, hey, this is a great manuscript, but I don't know if I can help with this specific manuscript. So that's how Sandra and I have done it in the past.
Yeah, exactly. I think our end goal is to just figure out a manuscript that we both fall in love with, but that we also are both confident that we can help and take the writer to the next level. Because sometimes I'm sure you've heard this a lot, and we've heard this a lot, that the industry is so subjective, and Pitch Wars isn't any different, that our inboxes are so subjective when we get them in, that it's, I'm not just thinking about what will I like, but I'm also thinking about what will Shannon like. And I'm also thinking about, okay, what can both Shannon and I actually mentor in terms of getting the writer to, again, the next level. And so that's kind of the way that we approach our inboxes. We share the work, and then we kind of take it from there in terms of finding the mentee that can both benefit from both of us.
And Sarah and I pretty much operate the same way as co-mentors. We have like a shared Google Doc where we list all the submissions that we've gotten. We list their word count, their genre, and then we have like a final column where, as we're reading through them, we leave each other comments like of what we thought about it. And I think more often than not, it's what you both have been saying. It's that I may enjoy a manuscript, or I may read it and see that it's lacking something. But if I, as a mentor, don't feel like I know how to help you make it better, then I'm probably not going to pick that manuscript. And I say that so that you'll realize that most of the time, and I think I can say this in general, the reason that we turn down manuscripts, it's not because of the writer or the manuscript, it's because of us and our ability to know what to do to help you. So just take that as you will. As as authors, we always learn how to deal with rejection, but really I think in Pitch Wars, a lot of times it's, I turn down a manuscript because I don't know how to help it. Or we actually have gotten manuscripts before where I've looked at it and I've said, this doesn't need any help. Like, take, that's pretty good. So, but yeah, we go back and forth, and it really is, like Sandra was saying, it's so subjective. Some things just click with you and you love the voice and you love the story. But if somebody asked me, well, what exactly made you pick that? I thought, well, it gave me that feeling, I couldn't be really specific. But yeah, we go back and forth a ton. We're more likely just to go ahead and request a full manuscript after we've read your submission, because it's easier to do that than to like request 25 or 50 pages and then come back to you. So more often than not, we just go ahead and request the full if we're interested in reading more.
This is my 7th year, and I've learned how to pace myself in reading, because it's very easy, to get burned out by the volume, and then not everybody gets a fair shot. And I know all mentors really do, the best job that they can in reading everything, and so it's learning to kind of keeping that energy up. And so for me, how I do it is like Adrianna and Sarah, I have a spreadsheet, that I enter everything into and make notes to myself, but I'm very careful now about pacing. And so I can request a manuscript, even a week before announcements, because I'm just kind of getting, carefully getting through everything. I do read everything. And because a lot of times, your first 5, 6, 7 pages are nothing, but then that spark, it shows up on page 9 or 10. A synopsis might be really messy and not, really tell me much, but the pages give me a much better idea. So I really do read everything, the query, synopsis, and pages. And so that's partly why too, I have to pace myself to give everybody, that same kind of energy in the fair shot. And then we can ask questions, when we request, we can't, give notes or anything, but we can ask questions to kind of feel you out as far as, if there is an openness to the changes that we think need to be made, and just your situation, and just to kind of get a sense of you a little bit more personally and how we might work together. And that's not to make anybody nervous about answering the questions, just answer the questions the way you are. But that helps us too, because, we want to be sure that, we have a relationship with you. I mean, this is a relationship between the two of us. It's not, one above and one below, even though one has a little bit more experience. It's, we become friends. We keep in touch, afterwards, so really we're peers. We are your peers, and we are just as excited to see you become a debut author as we are for our own work.
All right. Sorry, someone sent a message about Pitch Wars. So yeah, cool. Okay. So after the mentees after the mentees are announced, what are some of the things that you hope the mentee is prepared with? What do you think, in general, what are some things that anyone should think about when first tackling a revision?
I think there is some pre-work that everybody who enters Pitch Wars can do. A lot of us, I brought a bunch of books in case we were asked about resources. A lot of us have books or tools that we rely on and will be useful for anybody. Another mentor, Sophia Pasternak, has this amazing character therapy video series on YouTube. I highly recommend it. Another mentor, Amanda Rawson-Hill, has this fantastic blog series of exercises about theme and utilizing theme to, really highlight the essence of your novel. So all of that's useful whether you're chosen and begin a revision process or not. So I think that I plan to, post a Twitter thread of resources that I recommend. I'm sure other mentors will be doing that as well. But I think that, if you're looking for something to do, especially while you're waiting, that, using some of the resources that we suggest will give you a leg up, especially if you are selected. But even if you're not, again, Pitch Wars is as much about the community as it is about being selected. And I know so many people who have made long-term friendships and critique partners from people that they met while submitting to Pitch Wars.
And then I can add in real fast that I would just, first, I probably wouldn't try to schedule too many things around the time that you're going to be revising a lot. I think just in terms for mental health, just be prepared to give yourself the bandwidth to revise so you're not super stressed out. And then just to kind of go off of that, but also give yourself little things that you can celebrate with, have an idea of if I meet this goal, I get to celebrate this way. And just give yourself, the ability to celebrate as you do revisions and be prepared to celebrate not only with friends and family, but with your mentors as well, because we're going to be there celebrating with you. And then in general, some things anyone should know when first tackling a revision. It's just that there's not one right way to tackle a revision. Again, everybody's so different, and there's not, we can give you tips in terms of this is where we think you need help, and then maybe you do something completely different that still works. And so being prepared to bring your own ideas to the manuscript as well, and not feeling like you have to do every single thing that we advise, because at the end of the day, everything's just a suggestion. And just being able to input your own voice as well, and not feeling like you have to do exactly what we say, or the manuscript's not going to find an agent, not going to sell. So just being prepared to kind of stand up for yourself as well, and making sure that your voice is heard when we're talking about your manuscript.
Going off what Sandra said, I think it's just as important to know what you're not willing to revise as it is knowing what you are willing to revise. It may take some reflection, but you might even know that before you're submitting your manuscript, because I imagine mentors will ask that when they're looking at your full. But it is important to know the parts of your book that you want to keep the same and why you want to keep them the same, while also having an open mind going into your revisions.
Yeah, that's actually one of the questions Sarah and I always ask, like, what are your foundations? What are you non-negotiable that you don't want to change? Because that gives us a sense of how we can suggest the manuscript be improved. But Sandra, I love your idea, because I'm somebody who only ever accomplishes anything by bribing myself. So yes, absolutely give yourself time and space to celebrate, because you need to look at your revision in small bits rather than this massive thing you are trying to undertake. So if you need to do like one pass where you're only focusing on this one character and how you've decided to do their internalization, or one pass where you realize setting really isn't as vibrant as it could be, and so you're working on that, I think that's why it goes to show you that you have to write a story that you are incredibly passionate about, because you're going to be reading it a few times. So I think just treating it little by little, and knowing, like we've said, that your mentors are here to help you every step of the way. The second mentees are announced and they set up, the Facebook groups and this, that, and the other, for an introvert like me, that was totally overwhelming. I think I got sent like 5 reminders like, hey, are you going to join the Facebook group? Because it scared the snot out of me. It was all these people I didn't know. Really, I highly recommend diving into that community, because hands down, that's going to be the biggest thing you get out of Pitch Wars. My Pitch Wars class of 2017, we still have our Facebook group that we're always posting on and celebrating with each other and crying with each other and complaining with each other. So the community, really go ahead and dive in there, as frightening as it can be, because it's all these new people. Do it, because they will really help you every step of the way. If you have questions, or you just need to vent, that's the way to do it. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and related, adding to that, what I've done in the past, because I've read, I read, of course, all your pages, and what I've done in the past is offered to match people who could potentially be critique partners, because they're kind of writing in a similar category, or seem to have a similar style. I know other mentors have done that too. I didn't invent that idea. I definitely copied it from someone. So again, even if you're not chosen, being part of the Pitch Wars community is incredibly valuable. And mentors, I know all of the mentors are so excited for everyone. It's not only our mentee. And so, even after the announcement, keep an eye on our Twitter, to see if there are some mentors who have the time. Again, it's not something, I've done every year. I just haven't had the time. But when I do, I like to be able to, match some people. But of course, I just always ask, first. I'm not, matching everybody. And so, keep an eye on other threads to see if mentors might have some other offerings to help you hook into that community that's so valuable.
All right. A couple comments I wanted to share with y'all. People are interested in the resources that you mentioned, Rebecca. So yeah, and then another resource, Susan asked, can you share the link to the blog post on theme by Amanda Rossenhill? So if you want to tweet out your resources and just tag the Pitch Wars account, and we'll make sure to retweet it.
Yeah, I'll write like Pitch Wars resources. So if you search my name, Pitch Wars resources, you'll find the thread. And I'll try to do that this weekend, Labor Day weekend. Just add a little labor to the weekend.
Yeah, my boss was like,
don't
work on Monday. And I'm like, do you know me? Nope, that's not going to happen. Okay. And Sarah said, agreed about the community of such an awesome group of critique partners after meeting on Twitter last year. Yeah. And we always say, even if you don't plan on participating in Pitch Wars, or even if you're unsure, you can still participate in all the different things that we offer. You can still take anything you want from the community and leave whatever you don't want. Yeah, Lee said we'll retweet from the Pitch Wars account too. Okay, we probably have time for maybe one, maybe two more questions. So George asked, is a third person multiple viewpoint, 3 people, MG fantasy popular in middle grade?
I'm gonna let somebody who reads more like high fantasy, because I personally, for my attention span, can't tolerate multiple points of view. If I do, it's only going to be 2, but that's just me as a reader. I don't want to speak for like the industry as a whole. I don't think that's my place.
I haven't seen it a lot. I don't read a lot of middle grade, but I do read, like, I try to keep up with what's being published, and I haven't seen it a lot, but I don't. Does anyone else want to chime in?
I do remember reading, of course, this is me, reading a book where a giant cockroach was the main character, and the name is going to escape me. I can see the cover. I'll post the link later. And it had at least three points of view. And even though I read a lot of YA and adult, it was still kind of a challenge because, like we were talking about before, middle grade, has to be tighter. It needs to move much more quickly, so making that switch automatically slows you down, and not in a bad way. I mean, but you have to, pause and make that switch. So, I think it can be done. It obviously has been done. And I would try to find examples and read those and see how the author managed the transitions, how many, characters they did have, what the differences were like between the voices and that sort of thing. But it definitely is a challenge.
Yeah, and it's a challenge across the board. I've had a YA project where I've had multiple points of view, and my agent has made me transform it into one point of view. And so I think just being open to doing that is really important, more than anything else, because like Rebecca said, it's a bandwidth issue, right? And if your story arc isn't tight, then most likely you're going to have to change it from either 3 points of view to 2, or most likely 1 point of view. But it's also, kind of going off what Shannon said before, it's also, that's why you have critique partners to kind of help you with that. And Pitch Wars is an amazing opportunity to find critique partners. Like Shannon and I became a critique partner off of Pitch Wars a few years ago, and we're still reading each other's work 4 years later, I think, something like that. And so, again, take advantage of the community to help you find critique partners. And if you get into Pitch Wars with your 3 POV MG, again, your mentor is able to kind of help you figure that out.
All right. We have reached the end of our time today. So I'm going to post a link right now of all the upcoming chats. So both Twitter and video chats. So I think most of these mentors are participating in at least one more thing, maybe a Twitter chat or maybe another video chat. So check those out for sure. Usually our mentors are pretty open to questions on Twitter as well if you have a specific question. Susan gave me an idea though, because like people are always asking, well, how do I make friends on Pitch Wars? So if y'all are watching, if you want to share your Twitter, Instagram, whatever, your social media link, so you can all kind of go follow each other and start making those friends, that would be really cool. And I'm just going to ask our mentors to close us out with any final thought you have, and two, where people can find you online. So we'll start with Adrianna.
Okay. I guess final thought is, and I'm saying this as somebody who's usually scared shitless of everything, you don't get anything by not trying. So if you're hesitant to jump in and apply for Pitch Wars, just jump in. Honestly, I got my agent through an in-person pitch, which is for someone like an introvert like me. I could have died, but I did it. I jumped in, and I'm so glad I did. And so sometimes you just have to be willing to take those risks. It will be worth it either way, whether you make it in or not, because you will potentially get to connect with people. So that was my final word. What was the other thing we were supposed to say?
Where people can find you online.
Find me online. On Twitter, I'm A Cuevas Writes. And on Instagram, I'm just Adrianna Cuevas, my full name. It's mostly food on Instagram and nonsense on Twitter.
Yeah, but it's gorgeous food on Twitter. I follow her Instagram and oh my gosh. I mean, I truly was like, is she a chef as well? Like, is that her second job? Because it's beautiful, beautiful Twitter. I mean, Instagram.
It's my procrastination method.
Shannon?
Yeah, so, well, I would just say, similar to what Adrianna said, just jump in. Try not to hesitate too much. Like Sandra said earlier, we became friends because of Pitch Wars. We subbed to the same mentor. We didn't get chosen, but she connected us. And that friendship has been priceless for me. So don't get too focused on, I got to get to that showcase. I got to get a mentor. There's so much value you can get from going into Pitch Wars and just making friends and finding those connections. And where you can find me online, I'm at author SAT, both on Twitter and on Instagram. And I often share my cats. So you'll get to see Bogart again, which was the cat you met earlier.
Becca, you want to go? Oh, I keep doing the opposite. Y'all do whatever you want to do.
That's fine. I am at RebeccaPetruck.com is my website, and it's my Twitter and my Instagram. And final thoughts, I was like, darn it, Adrianna took the best final thought. But really, you know, again, just like she said, it's worth trying and putting yourself out there, even when it's nerve-wracking. And we're all nice. You know, middle grade is just a really nice, fun, friendly bunch. We don't bite, I mean, we'll lick cookies and put ants on your food and stuff, but but mostly we don't bite. So yeah, so we're a safe space, and we look forward to seeing you.
And then I can be found at Sandra Proudman on both Twitter, Instagram, and I started posting on TikTok, but I haven't gotten very far, but you can find me on there as well. And I just want to mention real fast that Shannon actually has a really, really amazing blog as well, and a newsletter that goes out. So definitely follow Shannon on there too. I don't post as much, so I'm a little delayed, but and then final thought, I think one of the things I want to mention is just that we don't expect perfection, right? You know, somebody asked about a synopsis. Honestly, if you're an amazing writer at writing a synopsis, you're amazing, right? Like most of us are pretty bad at writing them, even at this stage where we're at. So don't feel like you have to have everything, all your materials be perfect, because that's the whole point of a mentorship, right? Is we expect there to be, we probably won't choose you if your materials are perfect. We want to work with a mentee who needs the help. And so just being confident enough to feel like you don't have to have a perfect synopsis, a perfect query, perfect pages. Like Rebecca said, sometimes we're going to be reading past that first chapter because sometimes your first chapter is actually your second chapter. And so don't be afraid of turning in material that you don't feel 100% confident about, because we're going to get you there.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, mentors, for volunteering your time to answer everyone's questions. We really appreciate it. And whether you're watching us live or watching the replay, good luck, happy pitching, and everyone stay safe. So good night. Or it's not nighttime. Bye, y'all.
Thanks.